Welcome to the February 2025 edition of Hunt Camp Mail. I hope everyone had a great Valentine's Day this year. It certainly was a great Valentine's Day in the Desert Dog household, if you get what I mean. For the exception of some lucky goose hunting opportunities, February is that weird transition month where deer, duck, and upland season is over, but you haven't really broken out your turkey hunting gear yet. But I guess it does give us a whole month to focus on our wives for Valentine's Day, right? Instead of buying fishing and hunting gear. But I hope you all enjoyed my vintage side by side challenge video. Most YouTubers are trying to review kind of the latest and greatest new firearm releases from the SHOT Show, but old Desert Dog's over here reviewing antique guns. I got a large number of viewers reaching out to me this month, so let's get to February's mail. And our first letter for February is from John in Australia. And everyone knows I love my Aussie viewers. John wrote, "Hi, Desert Dog. I'm glad that you had a good time at SCI. It was my first convention, and I had an absolute blast. There seemed to be a great sense of optimism in light of the election result. I heard from a lot of outfitters and other vendors that the DSC show in Atlanta was a big disappointment due to low attendance. I know that they plan to hold the show in Atlanta for the next few years, but it seems like there's a big push to move the show back to Texas next year. What do you think that DSC will move forward? I'm sorry, how do you think DSC will move forward in this situation?" Well, first of all, that's awesome that you flew all the way from Australia to Nashville to attend the SCI convention. If you probably noticed there that Aussie hunting outfits were well represented at the show this year. And, it's a shame that we didn't bump into each other. But to answer your question, I'd say for the last 2 years, the Dallas Safari Club has kind of been slipping, and SCI has kind of been returning to its former greatness. So they're kind of switching roles right now, in my opinion. DSC had to move their convention to another city because the convention center that they were using in Dallas is getting demolished and rebuilt. So that's going to take a few years to happen. But the problem is that they picked a trashy liberal city to have the SCI convention in. Although Georgia is a very pro-hunting, freedom-loving state in general, the city of Atlanta is kind of the opposite of that. No conservative who's ever been to Atlanta wants to purposely return there. I had friends that had booths at both shows, and they told me that the employees and the event staff at the DSC convention in Atlanta were extremely rude and incompetent. None of them sold any hunts at the Atlanta show at all. And even attendees to that show were complaining about the rude staff at the Atlanta event. DSC got a new CEO this year, so there was a real opportunity for change. But rather than fixing this mess, he actually doubled down, insisted that this year's convention was fantastic, and scheduled the 2026 DSC convention to be in Atlanta again. Many people online are stating that they're done with DSC, and many attendees that did show up to that said they're never going to another Atlanta show again. To SCI's credit, though, when Las Vegas started turning into Los Angeles East and became a trashy anti-hunting city in general, SCI was smart enough to move to a big city that actually loves hunters. And Nashville is a safe, fun city with cheap flights, cheap hotel rooms, cheap rental cars, and just a more festive, safe environment, I believe. It was great bar hopping down Broadway and Painter's Alley and seeing all the big signs up on the walls welcoming hunters to Nashville. And the people of Nashville are some of the nicest folks that you'll ever encounter. SCI at one point became an organization that cared more about horn measurements than ethics. They kind of supported can hunting, and they kind of had an elitist attitude about them, sort of like the Houston Safari Club, which nobody likes. But SCI does seem to be changing, and Nashville was a great move. And our next letter is from Dr. Wright, and he didn't say where he was from, and that's Dr. Wright, Wright. Dr. Wright wrote, I really appreciate your reviews. 3 questions on the Safari Express and 375. Do you know if the current Portugal models are good quality? Also, does the magazine spring and claw extractor need to be replaced? Not sure if this was with US, Portuguese, or both. Also, I want to use Tally QD rings for a Leupold 6HD 1:6x24, but prefer the low profile Starhead as I worry about the levers catching on clothes. Any opinion? I'll be using it on buffalo in Zimbabwe next year. Well, Dr. Wright, there have been reports of Winchester quality kind of slipping, just like all quality slipping in the firearm industry right now, it seems. Especially coming out of the COVID pandemic for the last few years. But, this seems to be mostly assembly related issues. But to tell you the truth, I personally haven't seen any issues myself. The spring and extractor issues were actually with the Classic Series Model 70s made between about 1992 and 1998. And those used MIM parts. In 1999, the Model 70 went back to using high quality spring steel in all of their springs and extractors. So the Model 70s made in the 21st century don't really have the issues that you're talking about. And you don't have to use QD rings if you don't want to. I mean, it's not mandatory. Just make sure that you have the proper wrench or key with you while you're hunting. I mean, on you while you're hunting, so that you could take the scope off if you need to. Personally, I always carry a multi-tool on my belt that has the key I need to remove my scope from the bases, if I need to go to my iron sights. Also be mindful that I have had durability issues with the Leupold VX5 and VX6 scopes over the last few years. I bought that same exact VX6 1:6 power, and I brought it with me on my last buffalo hunt, and it didn't survive the flight home. So just be mindful of that. And our next letter is from Cornbread in Florida. Cornbread wrote, I have a tough question for you. I'm a lefty and using a Browning BLR in 300 Win Mag for elk. The problem is the parallax focus. I have a Leupold VX5 HD 3-15x44 on this rifle. I have to use my right hand to reach over the scope to use the parallax focus knob, which is very awkward. I ended up buying several Zeiss Conquest 4 4-16x44 scopes, but the parallax focus knob on those is even harder for me to use. Are you aware of any high-end scopes for lefties where the parallax knob is on the right side or even the top? Well, it's great to hear from you again, Cornbread. But as far as scopes go, the closest thing you'll find to what you want is the more vintage scopes that have the parallax adjustment on the objective bill. I had an old Nikon Pro Staff that had the parallax adjustment on the objective bell, and it worked fine. So there's always that option of just buying a more vintage scope with that feature. But I personally believe that you're really overthinking this issue. In a real hunting situation, your parallax can actually be off a little bit, in my opinion, and you'll still be very accurate with that rifle. Let's say you have your parallax set at 100 yards and you shoot at 300 yards. Well, you're only probably going to realistically be off by about a half inch at 300 yards. And that's a realistic deviation from zero. You can honestly set your scope with parallax at 150 yards and probably hunt within the maximum point blank range of your cartridge without even noticing anything. I use fixed parallax scopes all the time, and I don't really consider them to be a handicap at all when I'm using them within ethical hunting distances. So you might be unnecessarily overusing your parallax adjustment while hunting. It only becomes a factor when you turn your magnification above 10 power, and then it essentially becomes a focus knob. And our next letter is from Tony in San Antonio, Texas. Tony wrote, "Dude, I have emailed you 4 times already about your load data for my 7mm 08. Do you even read this stuff?" Woo! Dude, you need to take a chill pill. My mailbox is just exploding with emails these days, and I'm trying to, I'm doing my best to answer everybody in a timely manner. When you write me, please keep it brief and don't get angry if I don't answer you back immediately. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. I still have a day job that has me working about 50 hours a week. And add to this, the fact that I'd rather be hunting and fishing during my time off than reading my email. So please be patient with me when it comes to answering your emails. Also, if you've watched my channel long enough, you know that I do not give load data out to anybody. Honestly, you shouldn't be asking me for load data anyways, because loads are specific to your rifle using your components. So, why would you want to use someone else's load data? So don't be lazy, dude. Develop your own loads. And our next letter is from Clayton in North Carolina. Clayton wrote, "My smith advised me against bedding in a wood stock. Have you ever had issues with temperature shifts in a bedded wood stock?" Phew. Clayton, this isn't for you, but your gunsmith is going to get the bullshit button. Bullshit! 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 I have never encountered a properly bedded wood stock that didn't improve precision and strength. That's one of the problems with so-called gunsmiths these days. Most of them just want to assemble AR-15s, add parts to Glocks and 1911s, and kind of screw on pre-fit barrels. They hate bedding stocks, and they honestly probably shouldn't be doing it anyways, because most of them don't do a stress-free bedding job like what's required for accuracy. And, they end up making the rifle actually shoot much worse. If your gunsmith tightens up the action screws after putting the action into the bedding, run away. Your rifle will actually be more resistant to the effects of temperature shifts when it's properly bedded and free-floated. If your smith really told you to never bed a wood stock, I wouldn't use that guy anymore. And our next letter is from Marcus from the UK. Marcus wrote, "I enjoyed the vintage side-by-side shotgun video. Too bad you couldn't acquire an inexpensive British side-by-side for the challenge. Your JP Sauer & Son is a beautiful gun, and it was interesting to watch you show us all the factory markings and interpret them. I've been shooting shotguns for 40 years, and as we make the permanent switch to non-toxic loads, I think the pressures of modern steel and bismuth loads are much higher than the lead loads of the past. Modern non-toxic loads seem to have much more recoil, and I suspect this is because of the higher pressures." Well, Marcus, I would have loved to have used an old English side-by-side for that challenge, but I just couldn't find one in good condition with 2 3/4-inch chambers for $1,000 or less. Would have been nice to find one, but I didn't. On the pressure thing, remember that peak pressure has very little to do with actual recoil. For instance, look at it this way. A rifle chambered in .270 Winchester shoots ammo with 65,000 PSI of pressure, and it has almost no felt recoil. But a 3-inch 12-gauge duck load for your shotgun only has 11,500 psi of pressure, and it has lots of recoil. So pressure doesn't really correlate with the level of felt recoil that you have. But in general, I think you are correct. Many factory non-toxic loads are way over SAMI specs, in my opinion. Someone in the industry, after I posted that vintage side-by-side video, somebody working in the industry right now sent me test results he did on actual SAMI equipment in an actual ammunition laboratory. And I was surprised to learn that Bosch shot shells are actually way over pressure, way above what Bosch claims they are. So I also remember in the past, this is maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, somebody tested Remington's hypersonic steel duck loads, and those had over 18,000 psi of pressure. I mean, look at it this way. SAMI maximum is 11,500 psi for a 3-inch 12-gauge load. Most barrels are proof tested at 20,000 psi, and those factory Remington 12-gauge loads were almost at that. So I believe that the quest for speed with these modern non-toxic loads is leading to very high pressures. And our next letter is from Magnar in Norway. Magnar wrote, I want to congratulate and thank you on some great videos on hunting and shooting subjects. They are really first class. Even though I am a fairly experienced hunter, you always have some new things to teach me and also sometimes better understand and reiterate why certain things in hunting are done right or wrong. I am now training and preparing for my first buffalo hunt in Africa with my 416 Rigby, but to be honest, I'm a little bit concerned about it since these are truly dangerous game and should be treated as such. This is a very new hunting situation for me, as I've never been to Africa or hunted something as dangerous. And obviously, though a Cape buffalo charge, I guess, is not highly likely, not being prepared for it would be very foolish indeed. There is always an ever-present calculated risk hunting them. Could you possibly make a video about this topic for first-time anxious buff hunters, having seen way too many Mark Sullivan videos? For a first-timer, where's the best place to start relative to safety? Wow, Magnar, you're just jumping into the fire without warming up, aren't you? Most people, they kind of work their way up to a dangerous game hunt. You know, they'll travel to Africa, go on a couple plains game hunts, and then once they figure out the ins and outs of traveling within Africa and what PHs expect and how to get on the sticks really quick and, basically how to do things their way, then they'll gradually progress up into dangerous game hunting. And of course, that's what I did, and that's what most experienced Africa hunters have done. But man, you're jumping in with both feet here and going straight to a dangerous game hunt. And you're right, a charge from a buffalo is highly unlikely. And what many YouTubers kind of consider a charge really isn't a charge. It's usually the buffalo running past somebody as they're trying to escape, or the buffalo kind of stumbling forward after a full frontal shot. But at the same time, underestimating a buffalo, especially a wounded one, would be a huge mistake. Get the whole Mark Sullivan or Peter Capstick fantasy out of your head permanently. If you spend enough time in the wild, unfenced places of Africa, it's coming across cow elephants that'll scare you the most, not buffalo. And when you're actually out there hunting, but the biggest pointer I can give you is that first shot counts more than anything. If that first shot isn't good, the real danger starts when you have to wander into the Jess chasing a wounded buffalo. That's when things get really sketchy. Your first shot will also be a very quick shot off a shooting stick. So you need to practice quick, accurate shooting off the sticks. If I were you, I would contact your PH and see what type of shooting sticks that he uses. He might use traditional tripod shooting sticks, or he might use the more modern European style quad sticks. But whatever your PH has, you need to buy that and practice with that. And our next letter is from Eric in Hawaii. I've been getting a lot of letters from Hawaii lately. Eric wrote, "What do you think is the state of the NRA, and who are the reformed-minded candidates running for the NRA Board of Directors? While acknowledging achievements, I felt betrayed after learning of the misspending and corruption of LaPierre and team. I'm a life member and my wife is a member as well. Ballots are due April 6, 2025. Who should we support?" You know, Eric, I hate telling people how to vote, but I'll go ahead and respond to your letter here and give you a little background on myself. I've been a life NRA member since 1992, and the NRA has had many ups and downs through the decades. I remember when the NRA went through a phase where the board of directors was a bunch of FUDs who supported gun control, and they eventually got better and kind of straightened things out. Then we were graced with the corrupt LaPierre shit show that you alluded to here. My problem with the NRA, though, isn't so much the things that LaPierre did. It's that I think they've had an antiquated business model for several decades now. They're really stuck in the past. The NRA funnels millions of dollars to politicians who are already pro-gun. So that money's just a complete waste. In the past, the NRA used to be able to sway some moderate Democrats over to our side and, to go against gun control. But that fantasy is over now. No Democrats are going to side with the NRA anymore. So lobbying politicians is a complete and total waste of money these days. What the NRA needs to do is hire a massive amount of good lawyers instead of paying lobbyists. Success can only happen through the court system these days, so the NRA needs to stay the hell out of Washington. On the voting issue here, Barr, Froman, King, Craig, Frampton, Friedman, Van Horn, and Sigler were already on the board and tried to sweep LaPierre's corruption under the rug, so don't vote for those people. Basically, when you're researching who you're going to vote for the NRA Board of Directors, stay away from anyone that supported LaPierre or currently supports Bob Barr. And our next letter is from Chris from Minnesota, and he titled his email to me, Radical Leftist Safari. So I had to click on that, right? And Chris wrote, "The hunting itch got to me, and I remembered my father used to frequently talk about hunting Africa. He never made it out, and he hasn't gotten any younger, and I'm in a position in life where I can afford a reasonable plains game hunt. He isn't going to be able to hike or stalk long distances. Do you have any advice as to where to take him from a country or even specific PH? I probably have till next year at the latest to plan something, which obviously isn't a lot of time. In your opinion, is the political instability in South Africa a big enough issue to consider other destinations? As for the clickbait title, I am in fact a dirty liberal from a conservative family." Like I said, the title of his email was Radical Leftist Safari. Good to see you have a sense of humor. For the type of hunt I feel like you're asking for, you'll be looking at outfits in South Africa and probably Namibia as well. Namibia is safer than South Africa, but it's going to cost you a little bit more monetarily. Just make sure you ask the outfitters that you talk to if they can accommodate a hunter with physical limitations. In my experience, most game ranches can do that. In South Africa, an outfit like KMG Safaris is probably close to what you're looking for. And I believe KMG Safaris usually has a father and son special that they offer. In Namibia, Koa Safaris would be a good place for your first time Africa hunt, I think. Your email subject line did entice me to click on it. I'll admit that. But I have a feeling that you're actually a lino, which stands for liberal in name only, because you understand the conservation and spiritual value of hunting, and you love your father enough to take him on a hunt with you. My advice to you is to do this hunt sooner than later. Your dad's physical condition isn't going to get any better than it is right now. And every day that you procrastinate is another day closer to not getting this hunt done. So plan for your hunt now. And our next letter is from Craig in Canada. Craig wrote, "Hi, Desert Dog. From your videos, it shows that you have done a lot of travel fishing, both guided and do-it-yourself. What are some universal tackle items that you have found always productive on these trips?" Yeah. Craig, you're going to have to be a lot more specific than that. I wouldn't take marlin fishing tackle with me on a trout fishing trip. Fishing trips such as saltwater flats fishing would have very specific fly fishing gear needs and would depend on whether or not the big tarpon are running at the time I'm going. On any given fishing trip, I could be trolling offshore, in which case I'll have everything from marlin lures to hoochies for Dorado. I might be fly fishing in Alaska and, I need gear for that 40-pound king and I need gear for that 1-pound grayling. I might be soaking bait in a muddy pond for catfish somewhere in the south. I might be going to Christmas Island where I'll catch everything from bones to giant trevally and take lots of gear with me. Or I might be on a trip where I'm after a single species of fish, like tigerfish on the Zambezi River or bonefish in the Bahamas. And that lets me travel, in a minimalist fashion. So there's no clear answer to your question, obviously. But thanks for the letter, Craig. And I'm glad that you live in the 51st state. And our next letter is from Randall. Randall wrote, "I'm going to Africa my first time. Should I hire someone to get my gun permits? Also, is there a certain month I should go to get a Cape buffalo? I'm looking at May. They say it's the right time and he has a position open. Is that a good month?" I hate to sound condescending, but Africa is a huge continent comprising over 50 countries. And you never stated which country you're hunting in. If it's South Africa or Namibia, you should be fine in May, and that actually might be the best month to hunt. As you get towards equatorial regions of Africa or the floodplains or the deltas, it might be too flooded to go anywhere or really hunt anything in May in those particular areas. In Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Uganda, the vegetation will still be very thick in May, and animals might be very, very hard to spot. March, April, and May are also bad for mosquitoes and tsetse flies in some areas, and that might be too much for you to handle. So it depends not only on the country that you're hunting in, but in the area of the country that you're hunting. That's a problem here with a lot of noobs going to Africa. I get these questions every month. I'm going to Africa. What do I need to take? I'm going to Africa to hunt. What's the weather going to be like? I don't know. Africa's a humongous continent. Where are you going? On your gun permits question, you can hire a company to handle your gun permits. A lot of hunters do that, but I really like to do it myself, and I really consider it to be a pretty easy task. The one time I did hire a company to do my gun permits for me, they really screwed it up. So I just don't do that anymore. And whether you do that or not is your decision. And it's just going to depend on how capable you are and good at planning that you are. And our next letter is from Jack from Serbia. Jack wrote, "In one of your videos, you mentioned that young guys are becoming pussified. And unfortunately, that is the case all over the place. The internet generations are striving toward comfort in all aspects of their lives, and hunting and shooting sports are no exception. I'm not sure if the gun industry is just following the trend or actually helping in the creation of such an environment. Manufacturers are competing to create the softest recoil possible, the lightest gun possible, the thinnest scope wall possible, and so on and so on. There was a guy posting a video about hard recoil of his shotgun, and he used a pillow to lessen the impact. Perhaps he should have used his wife's pads, as they would have been less cumbersome. Nothing against progress and improvement, and not everybody tolerates recoil and the weight of the gun, and some adjustments are required and justified. But unfortunately, those adjustments are being pushed on all of us as a norm. I fucking love Serbians. Jack, when I read your letter, I got this visual of some type of metrosexual hunter putting one of his wife's maxi pads on the butt of his gun. I'm sorry, my friend. I'm stealing that idea for future videos. But yes, this new generation of neutered hunters is pushing the market in that direction, the direction that you described. Look at the Model 70, for instance. They stopped making the sporter model because people thought it was just too heavy. Now it's hard to find a good Model 70 without a lightweight stock, a thin barrel, and a stupid muzzle brake on it. Look at the crap we're seeing at the SHOT shows these days. They're obviously marketing ultra lightweight rifles chambered in modern heavy recoiling magnums like the PRC cartridges, so people can dial turrets and attempt to shoot animals out at long distances. The problem is that people can't really shoot those light rifles chambered in those big cartridges in real hunting situations, and they become unethical hunters. They miss a deer 5 times before wounding it, then get on the internet and tell everybody how great their rifle is. It's kind of bullshit. And our next letter is from Josh. Josh wrote me to tell me how much he enjoyed the vintage side-by-side shotgun video, and Josh sent me pictures of his 100-year-old Greener 3-inch 12-bore shotgun. So take a look at this. What a beautiful old side-by-side, Josh. Thanks for sharing it with us. And I'll be honest with you, before we made the vintage side-by-side challenge and I did that video, I really didn't give these old side-by-sides serious consideration. Most of the side-by-sides I've shot in the past were cheap, poorly regulated guns that I really didn't like very much. But, our old guns for that video are absolute works of art and shoot better than most modern over and unders. So I'll admit it, I'm hooked now. And our next letter is from Blake in Arizona. Blake wrote, I heard that the 7mm backcountry doesn't have reloading dies yet because they have to run the steel cases through the die almost a dozen times the size of case, and they have to flare the mouth as a separate step. Do you think the backcountry is doomed to fail? Well, if you go back a month and look at my previous hunt camp mail, I kind of give you a pretty detailed opinion on what I think of the 7mm backcountry at this point, because I really don't have all the information. But I do have a very reputable source in the industry, and I'm getting actually similar information to what you're describing here from him. And he's a very, very reliable source. I was told that Federal marketed that the cases could be easily reloaded without actually figuring out a way to do it first. They basically had to invent the technology after that claim was made. And, this is either going to be an epic flop or, it's going to be a huge step forward. And we'll have to see which one that is. At this point, you should be pretty used to the ammunition industries making outrageous claims because there was a lot of them last year. And our next letter is from Miguel in Fresno, California. Miguel wrote, I love watching YouTube hunting videos and followed all the major hunting channels for 5 years, including Desert Dog Outdoors. I canceled my cable television and just watched YouTube now because I don't care about politics or woke Hollywood shows anymore. I have noticed that your stuff is copied by others. I just watched a video of a guy teaching how to reduce recoil, and he just said what you said in your recoil video, word for word. It was funny because the guy seemed to disagree with you in the past. I find myself trusting your teachings more than others because they eventually end up copying what you teach. Thank you for making videos and passing your knowledge down to us. Your lessons mean a lot, and you teach us about life as well as hunting. Well, thank you for the kind letter, Miguel. And I would say most of what I teach are from lessons that I've learned from my own personal mistakes or lessons that were passed down to me by very wise people in my life. Luckily, I learned most of my lessons about life when I was young, and that gave me a head start in life and with my hobbies. They say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, so I guess I'm flattered. Honestly, when it comes to hunting or the technical aspects of shooting and reloading, most YouTube influencers had no real knowledge when they started doing their YouTube videos. You know, many of these YouTube influencers shot lots of animals or wrote lots of magazine articles, collected guns, and, attended the SHOT Show every year to report on it. But they really didn't know the technical details or practicality of what they were teaching or writing about. They had to learn and develop as time went on because they had to keep up with the content that others were putting out. So I hate to name drop on other YouTubers, but let's use Jim at Backfire as an example here. 5 years ago, Jim would tell everyone that a hunting rifle needs to be super light, with a carbon fiber barrel, a muzzle brake on the end of it, a vertical grip to hold on to, a light first focal plane scope, and it needs to shoot a 6.5 caliber ELD. In reality, Jim was just kind of repeating industry hype back then. Then he actually started hunting. Then he actually started shooting targets in actual field hunting conditions. Then he started looking at real world bullet performance. And before long, he started finding things out that I've known for 30 years. So he's gaining wisdom through experience. He's doing it later in life, but he's doing it. But I really believe that Jim at Backfire is a very intellectually honest person because he changes as he becomes wiser rather than stubbornly adhering to the dogma of his past. It might take longer for some, but we all end up at the same place eventually. For instance, if you look at me, I'm currently evolving my thinking, especially when it comes to modern reloading theory. So it's not always that people are trying to copy me. It's often that they eventually come to the same conclusions that I did through the same learning process that I went through. And our next letter is from Douglas in Iowa. Douglas wrote, I'm confused about something in your newest reloading video for Dangerous Game. You said to use 90 to 96% case fill, but in past reloading videos, you said to try to be as close as possible to 100% case fill with a powder that has the right burn rate. Have you changed your mind on this? Also, do you bump the shoulder back 2 thousandths, or have you changed your mind on that as well? Dougie, you need to pay more attention to what I say in my videos. I clearly stated that I try for 100% case fill with precision ammo and most of my hunting loads, but I leave a little bit of room in the case when I load my Dangerous Game ammunition. That was the whole point of the video, to show you that reloading Dangerous Game ammo is a different process than reloading other types of ammunition. So I think you missed the point on that video. On your second question, once again, I feel like you didn't pay attention to the video. With dangerous game ammo only, I set my full-length sizing die up to go all the way down and get everything out of that case. I want my loads to be a little bit sloppy in the chamber with that ammo because, it needs to function every time because my life might depend on it. With other ammo, I set my full-length sizing die, for 2 to 3 thousandths of bump. And, I enjoy those highly precise loads, but I don't care about groups when I'm shooting a buffalo at 30 yards. It just has to work every time. And our last question for the month is from Sid in Oxnard, California. And we call Oxnard the Alabama of the California coast. Sid wrote, I loved Knife Month, especially the Green River knife video. I want to put together my own custom knife like you did in that video, but I don't like the cheap stainless and 1095 blanks that are for sale. Have you ever put new handles on a factory knife that has better steel? Well, yeah, I have, and it's easy to do. If you have a knife that has the bolt-on scales like this, making custom scales is actually very easy. And I was given this Benchmade Saddle Mountain Skinner as a gift years ago, and I just love this blade profile. And I think the S30V steel is perfect for a general use hunting knife. But the factory handle scales on this knife were way too thin and kind of sharp, and it wasn't a very comfortable knife to use. So in order to save this knife from being tossed in a drawer somewhere, I made my own G10 scales and machined them to take the factory handle screws. I then used an RK Customs sheath and fit the knife to the sheath with my new scales on the knife using a heat gun, and it turned out really nice. And I think this handle is now perfect, and I really love this knife now. Well, I guess that's it for this month's mail. Here's some memes for the month of February.
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals, they take us higher. The night's young and it's just begun as she puts her hand in mine. We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be two hearts running wild.
I've been getting a large volume of Africa-related questions over the last several months, so the safari business must just be booming right now. And as I prepare for my Nyakasanga buffalo hunt this year, I'll add more Africa gear videos to my channel along the way for you. This will also be Winnie's third dangerous game hunt. And in case you haven't followed my channel for very long, Winnie is my Model 70 chambered in 416 Rem mag. And except for a bedding job, she's been bone stock with an affordable scope on her for many years. And I'm thinking about upgrading Winnie and bringing her into the 21st century. So perhaps I'll do a video on Winnie's makeover. Well, that's it for February's episode of Hunt Camp Mail. You can reach me with any questions or comments at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.